Hello there and welcome. I'm Ole Brygger, and if you're new here, I really hope I'll earn your subscription today. In this video, we are going to paint the Necropolis faction from Heroes of Might and Magic, the board game. A while ago, I made a video you can watch up here with my good friend Christian. He bought the full package of the board game, and he was so kind to allow me to paint one of the faction. And one of the factions that is my favorite is actually the Necropolis. We have 2 heroes, a city, and 7 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 7 units. I've already primed the miniatures with some black, Cinnafill highlighted with the gray, and dry brushed with a white. I'm going to paint them as close to the computer game as I can. And then I will tell you a story about each unit and the 2 heroes of the Necropolis faction. So we better get started. First, we will need a town. We need a town to recruit some creatures. And I think this model is very close to the real game. I got the new revised HD version of the game. It didn't make the graphics better, it just allowed you to run the game on a higher resolution monitor. But let's get some paint on this town, and I will try to match the colors of the game as close as possible. This is the Graveyard Grey, it's a speed paint, and it will speed up the painting process. I use a lot of speed paint in my miniature painting. And I really think that speed paint and contrast paint and other similar products have been misunderstood in the past because people were maybe using them wrong because they painted over black, which they were used to. I think it works great as a base coat, and then you can highlight with ordinary acrylic paints after, and it really speeds up the process with a decent result. And they're very easy to work with. It's just like a paint book, you just have to stay in the lines. And for people who are new to the hobby, it's a very easy way to get a very decent result. This model has some more details that are not in the game, and there was some very nice small tiny bricks popping out of the building, and I want to highlight them before I give the building a wash. And I will just use this dark tone from the army painter. I'll soak it into all the walls. I let it dry for about an hour, and then I used this uniform gray with a dry brush. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, if you think the music in the background is a bit dramatic, it's because it's the Necropolis Town music, and all the music in this video will be from the game. Now I just need the final details, painting the roads and some other small parts. And finally some smaller highlighting here and there, and the town is done. This is the 2 lowest level creatures you can get in the town of Necropolis. On the left we have the skeleton warriors, and on the right the zombies. These are the upgraded units they chose to make their models from. First, at level 1 you have the skeletons, and later you can upgrade them to skeleton warriors. So let's start with that. This is a level 1 creature. Some pallet bone for the bones. When playing the Necropolis faction, you can use necromancy to get more skeletons. Skeletons and skeleton warriors are level 1 creatures of the Necropolis. They are recruited from the cursed temple. They can also be generated by necromancy. So if you kill an enemy that is a living creature, you can raise them from the dead and add them to your army. For some of the metallic parts on this miniature, I used the gun metal from the army painter, but I needed a dark purple metal for his body armor. So I used the Hive Dweller purple speed paint and mixed it into the gun metal, and it actually worked okay. For the leather parts of the armor, I used some hardened leather speed paint. For the chainmail parts, I will use this Mithril metallic paint from the army painter. It's the most shiny metallic paint I've ever worked with. And after the metallic paints have dried up, I will use some dark tone to give it a more worn out and rusty look. This skeleton warrior has a bronze shield, and I will use the weapon bronze fanatic metallic paint from the army painter and give it a dark tone wash to make it more weathered. And finally, I will give it some more highlight with some ordinary acrylic paints. Here I use a brain matter beige for the bones. And this skeleton warrior is now done. It is now ready to be a part of the necromancer army. Zombies are the level 2 creatures of Necropolis. These are the upgraded from the Walking Dead and can also be raised with basic necromancy. I'll start with some runic grey for the skin. This will give the skin a blue dead tone. Some ogre clay for the pants, which will give them a dirty yellow look, like he was just raised from the graves. I'll use this fire drake speed paint on the shaft for his axe, noble skin for the boot, and some pallet bone for his hair. I'll also use the noble skin for his shirt. Some gunmetal for his armor. Oh wait, he doesn't have an armor, only a helmet and a shoulder pad. The zombie from the game have some bloodstains on it, but I think I'll just incorporate it into his muscle tissue instead. I will use the dark tone wash over the gunmetal. To make some more highlighted skin, I will use this frost blue. And this zombie is now ready for battle. The Wights and Wraith are level 3 creatures of the Necropolis. They're recruited from the Tomb of Souls. They can also be raised with advanced necromancy. This is the upgraded Wraith, and it was the fastest paint job I've done in a long time. I only used 2 colors on the model itself, the palette bone for the bones and the noble skin for the clothing. And then I used some Gravelord Grey on the base and highlighted a bit. The whole process took me less than 15 minutes. And I think the result turned out great with such little effort. And now he's ready to enter the army of Necropolis. Vampires and Vampire Lords. This is one of my favorite creatures in this game. This is a level 4 creature of Necropolis and they are recruited at the estate. I'll start with the runic grey to make the skin more pale and give it a blue tint. Some grim black for the hair. I used the noble skin for his coat. And one of my favorite things with this creature is that they have a special ability called Life Drain. This means when you attack with the Vampire Lords, you are given back the amount of damage you do to an enemy stack of creatures and you will get that life back to your Vampire Lords. This only applies if the enemy stack is not a mechanical creature or another undead creature. But I think it's one of the coolest ability in the game of Heroes of Might and Magic 3. For the orange accent colors on his coat, I will use the Nuclear Sunrise speed paint. And some hardened leather for his belt. A tiny drop of red paint into his eyes. Some Gravelord Grey on the base, and then we can start to paint some more details and make some highlights. For the pattern on his coat, I'll use this inner light. I'll use the same color to highlight other places on the coat as well. And the Vampire Lord is done. Now he's also ready to see some action in the Necropolis army. Leech. The Leech can be upgraded to a Power Leech, and they are the only ranged units. This is the level 5 creature of the Necropolis faction. I will use some pallet bone for the bones. The most of this miniature is metallics, but there is some clothing around his head, and for this I will use the noble skin. The base will get some Gravelord Grey. This is the same color I used on the previous miniatures. I will use the gun metallics for all the chainmail. For the gold parts, I will use the golden armor. This is a very bright and warm gold metallic paint, and I think it will suit this model very well. And for the orb on the top of his staff, I think it was more suitable to make it red. I think the black would just dull everything down, so I just decided to make it red, even though it's not correct for this miniature. And I think I will do a couple of more modifications, like painting his shoulder patch here red with a blood red speed paint, so it will be some sort of transparent with this metallic look underneath. And finally, I will use some dark tone wash on all his armor. And here we have the final results on this power leech. I think it turned out pretty okay. Here we have the Black Knight, and the model is the upgraded version to a Dread Knight. For the base coat on the horse, I will use the Grim Black speed paint. Black Knights and Dread Knights are a level 6 creature of the Necropolis faction. They are recruited in the Hall of Darkness. I'll use some Slaughter Red speed paint on the Patrol, and some gunmetal metallic paint for the armor on the horse and the knight. The Black Knight and Dread Knight have the ability to curse the enemy. They actually have a 25% chance of doing that, which will weaken the enemy. The Dread Knight has the ability to throw a death blow, which gives them a 20% chance of dealing double base damage when attacking a creature stack. And then I'm going to use some Brigandine Brown for all the leather parts. A white dot in the horse's eyes, and some white in the helmet on the knight. The purpose of this is to make the red paint I'm going to put in later pop a bit more. And then I will use a dark tone wash for the whole armor. And finally some mithril metallic paint to highlight all the spots on the armor to make it a bit more shiny on the edges. And finally, I will try to make some freehand work. I will still use the mithril silver to make some tiny dots here on the Patrol. Finish off the base with some minor details. And here is the Dread Knight, ready to enter the army of Necropolis as a high-tier creature. This is a bone dragon, and upgraded it becomes a ghost dragon. This is the level 7 creature of the Necropolis fort. They are recruited from the Dragon Vault, built into the mountains. I decided I wanted to paint this model as a mix between the bone dragon and the ghost dragon, so the body will be like bone and the wings will be white with a bluish tint. And for this I will use my airbrush. I found the lightest blue I had and mixed it with some white. Ghost dragons are also the most expensive unit for the Necropolis faction. It costs 3000 gold and 1 mercury. All the models in this video were primed ahead. I primed them with a black, Cenithal highlighted with a light grey, and dry brushed everything with white. And I'll just take advantage of this and use a dark tone wash. Usually I use the palette bone for bones on my miniatures, but I hope I can get a darker tone with this dark tone wash, and it will not be as yellowish as the other bone colors. As I did on the other models, I will use the Gravelord Grey on the base. And to finalize the ghost effect, I will use this bright sapphire from the Army Painter. I'll dry brush it on with a makeup brush. Some final details and highlight on the base, and we are pretty much done. And now this ghost dragon is ready to see some battle for the Necropolis army in Heroes of Might and Magic, the board game.
A Death Knight named Mott refuses to obey King Griffinheart's orders. An example must be made, so others will not contemplate such traitorous action. Mott has insulated himself with his armies. Infiltrate his troops, kill him, and take his command. When he is dead, resurrect his corpse and employ him in your ranks.
We can't play Heroes of Might and Magic without a couple of heroes. And here they are. Heroes of Might and Magic, the board game, have two Necropolis heroes. They have Sandro and Tamika. And first I will paint Sandro. First I will start with some noble skin. Sandro is a magic caster hero and he rides a rotten horse. So I think the noble skin will suit the horse well. I will need a very dark purple for his cloak, so I will mix two speed paints, the Grim Black and the Hive Dweller Purple. Sandro, or as he calls himself, Sandro the Great, is a powerful leech which plans to take over the world. He's one of the main and most important characters in the expansion of Heroes of Might and Magic: Shadow of Death. In Shadow of Death, Sandro began his plans to take over the world by disguising himself as a wizard and hiring several heroes into recovering artifacts for himself. I'm using the Slaughter Red speed paint to put in the cavities of the horse's muscle tissue, just to make it look a bit more rotten. It was very hard for me to make a close-up footage of me painting the eyes. The camera just kept on focusing on my fingers instead of the head. And the same went for the horse's eyes. Sorry about that, but you can see the final result very soon. And finally I gave it some highlights here and there. The flag on the post I didn't paint, I just kept it as I primed it and dry brushed it with white, because the flag is actually gray, so I didn't think it needed any color. And here he is, Sandro, one of the Necropolis Heroes of Magic. The final hero we need to paint is Tamika. Tamika's superior combat skills have put her in a position of power with the military forces of Daya. Besides merely leading troops, she is also responsible for training Black Knights and Dread Knights. She is the hero of might of the Necropolis faction. And this time I will actually start painting the base with the Gravelord Grey. Tamika is a Death Knight herself and she rides a black horse, so I will use the Grim Black for the horse. Tamika is a vampire and she has a very dark skin, so for this I will use the bony matter for her face. Some sexual brown for the flagpole. And like I did on the Dread Knights, I will use some red on the petrol. And some mithril metallics for the armor on her body and the horse. And finally I have the chance to paint a cape. I want to use the dynamic triad system from Army Painter, and this is something new for the Fanatic paint range. It has 6 colors and I will just work my way down from the deepest red to the brightest red. Finalizing the details with some palette bone. And putting in the last color of the 6 colors in the triad system. And finally some dark tone wash on all the armor parts to make it a bit more dark. And Tamika is done, ready to raise an army of Dread Knights and send it against the enemy. And one last thing I need to do before I can call this painting project done is painting the rims. Usually I paint them black, but for this I will paint them dark gray since this is the faction color of Necropolis in the board game of Heroes of Might and Magic 3. And the painting of the 10 miniatures is done. I'm not a super artist or anything. I just love painting miniatures and get them on the table fast. And that's why I primarily use speed paints. I think it gives you a very decent results, and I don't like unpainted miniatures in my games. So the rule is no unpainted miniatures on the table. There is actually something more to the Necropolis faction. They have 2 more heroes in the stretch goals. We have Widowmina and Lord Hard. I guess you just have to use the same 2 hero miniatures in the game. I haven't tried the game yet, but I have looked into some of the rules and I just can't wait to get these minis on the board. As you know, it's not my game, it's my friend's, and he was so kind to let me paint this faction. And I really hope that he will let me paint another faction. And I think we have an upcoming video in a near future. This is pretty much it for now. Let's have a closer look at these miniatures. Thank you so much for watching this video to the end. I really appreciate you being here, and we are soon going to build some more terrain. I have something coming up and I'm very excited about it. A new tool just arrived here at my doorstep yesterday, and I'm very excited about showing it off to you, but that will also have to wait in a future video, but it will be there soon. This is it for now. Thank you so much for watching. Have a nice day.